When a storm sealed a mountain in white silence, everyone believed a missing man was lost forever. But deep beneath the snow, in a hidden cave, a German shepherd made a different choice. This is not just a survival story. It is a story about loyalty so deep it defeats the cold, about courage in quiet places, and about how God sometimes sends miracles on four legs. Before we begin, tell me in the comments where you are watching from, and if you believe stories like this deserve to be told. Please subscribe to support the channel so more people can hear them. Spring came to Frosthaven, not as a sudden arrival, but as a slow softening. Snow stopped falling before it stopped existing. Winter faded like a song that ran out of melody, long before the echo disappeared. Icicles melted drop by drop, roads thawed, pine branches shook off their frost, and green needles returned in shy whispers. Cole Merrick stood outside his small rental cabin on the first truly warm afternoon of the year. Argo lay at his feet in the sun, eyes half closed, belly rising and falling in easy rhythm. The dog's winter coat, once bristled by cold and storm, now shed in tufts that dotted the ground like soft bits of cloud. Cole brushed him gently, each pass of his hand a reminder that Argo was not a dream, not a memory, but here, alive, breathing. Cole himself looked changed, stronger in posture, steadier in breath. The shadows under his eyes had lightened. The man who once feared he might not wake again in a frozen cave now simply enjoyed standing barefoot on warm ground. A familiar vehicle pulled into the gravel drive, Marcus Ellery's car. The officer stepped out. No uniform today, just jeans, a light shirt, and a relaxed demeanor. Marcus seemed lighter, not carefree. He would never be that, but less hardened at the edges. "There you are," Marcus called out, "the man the winter tried and failed to keep." Cole smiled. "I guess the season got tired of me." Marcus knelt beside Argo and stroked the dog's head. Argo wagged his tail, lazily, regally. "You ready?" Marcus asked. Cole nodded and grabbed his coat, though he didn't need it in the warmth. It was simply habit. Argo stood, shook out his fur, and followed. The town square of Frosthaven was modest, a circular plaza with a weathered flagpole, wooden benches, and a small stone memorial for local servicemen. Today, for the first time in months, people gathered there, smiling, greeting, socializing. Children ran with kites, elderly couples walked arm in arm, and in the center stood a makeshift podium. Simple timber blocks, sanded smooth. Clara Thorne was there, wearing a light jacket and looking notably less severe than during the investigation. Mei Lin arranged a display board with official papers. Samuel Decker and Louis Running Bear also attended, though off-duty in plain clothes. Their presence wasn't federal today. It was personal. Cole didn't quite know where to stand, but Marcus guided him gently to a place near the podium. Argo stayed pressed to his leg. The mayor of Frosthaven, an older white gentleman named Harold Whitcomb, 62, heavy beard, round glasses, and a grandfatherly disposition, stepped forward. He was a kindly figure known for telling long stories and delivering speeches that somehow managed to sound both official and cozy. He cleared his throat and began. "Ladies and gentlemen, neighbors and friends, this town has seen storms before. Snowstorms, windstorms, and storms of uncertainty. But, as always, we weather them together." He glanced at Cole. "Several months ago, we nearly lost one of our own, a son of Frosthaven." Cole felt the eyes on him, not with judgment, but with warmth. And we would have, if not for the steadfast loyalty of a friend who walked on four legs. People softly chuckled. Argo blinked and yawned, perfectly innocent. Mayor Whitcomb continued. "Today, on behalf of the people of Frosthaven, we acknowledge Argo, a dog who kept his human alive against cold, time, and despair." May unfolded the certificate. Clara lifted it carefully. The mayor read from it. "Argo, symbol of loyalty and courage in Frosthaven." The words hung in the air like bells. Applause followed, not explosive, not dramatic, but sincere. Hands clapped, boots stomped softly, a few whistles sounded. Cole looked down at Argo, who stared back up with uncomprehending sweetness. The dog didn't know why people applauded. He only knew he was next to Cole, That was enough. Marcus bent down and clipped a polished metal tag to Argo's collar. On it was etched, Frost Haven, loyal companion. Marcus whispered, barely audible, "You earned this, soldier." Argo licked his hand. After the ceremony, people mingled in the square. Clara approached Cole. "How does it feel?" she asked. Cole thought, then smiled. "Like I finally walked all the way out of that forest." Clara nodded. "And into daylight." Samuel Decker walked over, hands in pockets. The FCC filed their final report. The individuals involved in that covert broadcast network were apprehended 2 states away. They fled before we arrived at the site, but thanks to your help, they didn't get far. Cole felt a quiet satisfaction. So, the secret didn't stay buried. Samuel looked at Argo. "No, because someone refused to stop digging." Argo sniffed Samuel's leg. Samuel laughed. Marcus, overhearing, added, "He has a talent for uncovering the truth. Maybe we should hire him." Cole patted Argo's side. "No salary could pay for this one." Louis Running Bear approached last, slow, steady, as though time itself moved around him. He said in a calm, almost solemn tone, "Many people treat animals as lesser creatures, but the forest knows differently. They are keepers, guardians, healers." He looked at Cole. "You were not alone in that cave." Cole swallowed. "No, I wasn't." As the sun sank toward evening, people drifted home. Cole and Argo returned to the cabin. The air smelled of thawed soil and young pine. Birds sang again for the first time since winter. Cole sat on the porch step. Argo eased down beside him, resting his head against Cole's thigh. The world was quiet, not as winter quiet, but as spring quiet, a quiet of beginnings rather than endings. Cole spoke, gently, voice warm with peace. "We made it. We're home." Argo didn't answer with sound, only a deeper sigh and a slow blink. But in that sigh was all the affirmation Cole needed. The storm was over. Not just the snowstorm, the fear storm, the loneliness storm, the survival storm. Argo closed his eyes, and perhaps in his dreams, he ran not through blizzards, but through sunlit fields, grass underfoot, light above, and warmth all around. Cole looked out across the gentle land and whispered again, "Home." And this time, the words settled like sunlight itself. The next stages of the investigation unfolded not with fireworks, but with crisp paperwork, procedural patience, and the steady arms of the law. Frosthaven, once quiet and solitary in its winter rhythm, now hummed with a subdued seriousness. Letters exchanged between agencies, clearances requested, territorial permissions issued, and protocols followed with a care that felt almost ceremonial. Cole Merrick stood outside the police station on the cold afternoon that marked a turning point. He was healthier now, cheeks fuller, posture steadier, though still carrying cautious fragility. Argo stood beside him, a pillar of fur and focus, now with a small temporary identification tag clipped to his collar. Some of the officers had begun referring to him not as Cole's dog or the shepherd, but simply as Argo, the one who saved him. His reputation preceded him even in silence. Marcus Ellery joined them, carrying a folder of formal documents beneath his arm. He wore his badge openly today, along with an expression that balanced gravity and quiet optimism. "Ready?" Marcus asked. Cole nodded. "As ready as anyone can be before walking toward federal officials." Marcus chuckled. "Don't worry, they're human, mostly." Argo gave a small snort, or maybe just a breath, and Cole scratched behind his ear. They drove to the main ranger facility at the edge of the Federal Forest Preserve. The building itself was unremarkable, a long brown cabin structure of reinforced timber. But what occurred there was significant. Inside, Clara Thorne stood beside a table with Federal Ranger Louis Running Bear and 2 visiting federal investigators from the Communications Division. One was Agent Samuel Decker, a 45-year-old black man with a compact build, trimmed beard, and a voice that often sounded like he was quietly narrating an audiobook. He had a reputation for being perceptive rather than confrontational, The other was Agent Dana Havers, a 41-year-old white female with short dark hair, a pragmatic stance, and a personality that cut through dithering like a blade. She was known for her ability to ask short questions that forced long answers. As Cole entered with Argo, Samuel greeted him with a nod. "Mr. Merrick, and Argo, glad to see you both on your feet." Argo did not bark. He simply studied Samuel with level, modest eyes. Dana glanced briefly at the dog. "That's the one who kept you alive, correct?" Cole nodded. "Yes, he didn't sleep for 4 days, just kept me warm, and kept watch." Dana's lips tightened, surprisingly, with respect. "Then he's earned his place at this table." Marcus and Clara exchanged a brief look. It mattered when federal officers said things like that. Samuel spread a map across the table. It was a satellite-stitched representation of the forest, with red markers pinned in several points. "These 3 areas," Samuel explained, "have shown intermittent signal activity over the last 3 months. Short-burst encrypted transmissions. Not civilian, not legal." He glanced at Cole. "Your encounter, and Argo's scent finds, line up with the Eastern Quadrant." Cole leaned closer. "So it wasn't accidental. They weren't just there. They were operating." Dana took over. "And given the equipment found, this wasn't amateur radio. This was robust, military-grade broadcasting. Someone was bouncing high-security signals off satellite networks without authorization." Marcus folded his arms. "The people we saw, do we know who they are?" Clara answered. "Not yet. But we know who they're not. They're not hunters, not hikers, and not benign." The room fell into a quiet with weight. Louis Running Bear finally spoke, voice deep as slow thunder. "The forest has always attracted those who believe secrecy grants them immunity. They come here because trees do not talk, but the land notices, the animals notice, and people eventually notice." He looked at Argo, and the meaning was unmistakable. Later, the team assembled for a formal inspection, but this time backed by legal authority. What occurred was more of a lawful assertion than a confrontation. Cole, wearing a Ranger-issued ID badge as a civilian witness, walked beside Argo and Marcus. The group trekked into the forest along a different path, an access trail with boundary signs and marker posts. Light snow drifted from the gray above, layering over boot prints in clean sheets. Clara walked ahead with Dana, discussing jurisdiction lines. May followed, scanning coordinates on her device. Samuel walked in silence, eyes taking in everything, as though storing it all in photographic memory. Cole walked beside Marcus. "Is it strange that I feel calmer here than I did in the hospital?" Marcus nodded. "Not strange at all. Being back somewhere that almost ended you, but this time by choice, that's power." Argo's ears twitched, alert. Cole followed his gaze, and then Argo stopped. He sniffed the ground, once, twice, then moved toward a small clearing bordered by overgrown shrubs and knee-high drifts. Dana signaled. "Let him work." Argo circled the spot, nose diving into the snow. Then he pawed and unearthed a rectangular indentation. Not an object, but a footprint of storage. Something had once been placed there, and removed. Samuel crouched. A case, metal, heavy, was here recently, maybe within the last 2 weeks. Marcus exhaled slowly. Cole felt his heart pulse harder. Argo sniffed again, then followed the scent along a faint trail, up to a thicket of pines, until suddenly he stopped beneath a low branch. He stared upward. Marcus frowned. "What is it, boy?" Cole craned his neck, and there, halfway wedged in a crook of the tree, was a metal fragment, the latch of a radio case, snapped clean. Dana climbed, retrieved it. Samuel inspected it. "This is proprietary hardware. Someone didn't just hide equipment here. They staged a covert installation." Clara drew a breath. "Then we have what we need." Marcus nodded. "No arrest today, no shouting, no chasing, just evidence." Samuel added, "All admissible." Cole stood there. Argo pressed warmly to his leg, snow gently settling on both of their shoulders. And for the first time, Cole felt a shift. He was not a victim anymore, not simply the man who survived the cave. Now he was someone standing in the solving and the light. The return journey was quiet, but not tense, rather reflective. The kind of quiet after a wound begins to heal. Dana walked beside Marcus and muttered, "We'll take this up the ladder. Their days of hiding broadcast relays in your woods are over." Marcus gave a modest smile. "Good." Cole rested his hand on Argo's back as they walked, and for the shepherd, there was nothing strange about any of this, only the simple truth that he had found a scent, followed it, and in doing so, had turned stranger secrets into shared knowledge. Back in town, Clara filed the legal paperwork. Samuel documented the findings. Dana called a federal contact with clipped efficiency. Marcus signed statements. May archived photos. And Cole? He stepped outside into the winter light, not alone, but accompanied. The sun was sinking, glowing amber through the pine tips. The air was biting, but not cruel, and Frosthaven, despite its storms, felt protected. Cole looked down at Argo. "You did good," he murmured. Argo blinked, tail swaying. No heroics, just truth. And truth was enough. The days that followed were not dramatic in the way movies portrayed investigations. There were no midnight car chases, no smashed doors or shouted demands. Instead, there was steady work. Interviews, document checks, terrain mapping, and measured questions asked of the right people in the right tone. Inside Frosthaven's modest police station, a building that looked more like a renovated post office than a law enforcement center, Marcus Ellery's office became the quiet heart of the inquiry. The desk inside bore papers, satellite printouts, photographs of snow-covered paths, and a whiteboard filled with hand-drawn markers of locations found in the forest. Cole Merrick sat opposite Marcus, still not fully recovered but alert, wearing a soft gray sweater and still accompanied by the loyal shadow that was Argo. The dog lay curled at Cole's feet, always touching some part of him, a paw against his boot, a muzzle on his ankle, as though proximity was a language. Marcus leaned back in his chair, rubbing his forehead. "Cole, I'm going to ask you something you may not have considered. Were you possibly mistaken for someone else? Or did someone have reason to want you out of that forest?" Cole stared at the floor briefly. "No one hates me, Marcus. I don't have enemies. I don't owe anyone money. I'm not involved in anything criminal, and I'm not a threat to anyone." Marcus pointed at him gently. "Except you unknowingly walked near something they didn't want anyone to see." Cole swallowed. "Something like unlicensed communications?" That thought had taken root in him, not purely assumption, but a technical intuition, because before his freeze-trap days in the cave, Cole had glimpsed something odd, a metal case with an antenna collapsed alongside it. No one carried that kind of equipment for hunting. Marcus nodded slowly. "Your background, information tech in the service. You can recognize gear most people would shrug at. You know what's normal and what's covert." Cole exhaled. "I suppose I do." At that moment, Mei Lin entered Marcus's office. Her coat was wet with melted snow, and her cheeks reddened from cold. Without a word, she set down a folder on Marcus's desk. "We found something." Marcus and Cole looked up sharply. May sat down. "The fabric from the uniform? I cross-referenced the pattern. It's used by a particular private military contractor that's been known to dabble in gray area communications operations. Nothing illegal in corporate paperwork, but rumored involvement in unauthorized radio transmissions on federal land." Marcus frowned. "Which explains the glove with the GSR residue." May continued. "And I've requested federal assistance. They're sending an investigator." She paused. "A state-level one first, then Ethernet from D.C. if necessary." Cole raised an eyebrow. "Ethernet?" Marcus clarified. "Federal Communications Integrity Division. If someone's operating off-grid transmitters, that's their jurisdiction." Argo shifted, sensing the rising tension without understanding the words, and looked up at Cole with a subtle reassurance. Marcus tapped his desk. "Which brings us to the next name involved." He clicked his monitor and rotated it slightly to show Cole. A photo appeared. A woman in her late 30s, short auburn hair, intelligent eyes, wearing an official jacket. "This is Clara Thorne," Marcus said. "State investigator. She's driving in tonight." Cole asked, "What is she like?" Marcus answered thoughtfully. "Sharp, ethical, not easily intimidated. Which is good, because this case may pressure people we don't even know exist yet." Argo nudged Cole's hand, grounding him. That evening, as snow returned in a light and almost delicate drift, Clara Thorne arrived at the station. She was a 38-year-old white female, practical in posture, medium height with a straight-back stride, not muscular but brisk and controlled, like someone who lived inside her purpose. Her face had fine lines at the corners of her eyes, not from stress, but from years of determined focus. She was known for her integrity and her refusal to bow to political pressure, a trait that had once cost her a promotion, but earned her deep respect among principled officers. Marcus greeted her in the lobby. "Welcome to Frosthaven." Clara smiled briefly. "I hear your little town has grown more interesting lately." Marcus nodded. "Not by choice." Clara stepped into his office, glanced at the board, then at Cole and Argo. Her gaze softened slightly at the sight of the dog. "That must be the hero." Argo looked at her, blinked once, then settled back down on the floor with dignified calm. Clara took a seat and folded her hands. "I read the reports. What you found in the forest, and what Mr. Merrick experienced, concerns me. Federal land communications are tightly regulated. Unauthorized transmissions, especially encrypted ones, are not minor improprieties." Marcus leaned forward. "Do you think this is criminal?" Clara answered. "If there's a concealed transmitter out there, yes." Cole spoke, voice steady but marked with vulnerability. "I remember hearing metallic clanking before the storm. They were moving heavy things, like metal cases." Clara nodded slowly. "Equipment transport." May added, "We already sent samples to the lab for residue analysis, but I think Argo can find more." Clara turned to Cole's dog. "Does he have formal detection training?" Cole said, "Not official military certification, but he's intuitive, and he remembers scents." Clara almost smiled. "Sometimes instinct wins where training dulls. I'll take it." Then her tone sharpened. "We need to inspect again, but this time with authority behind us." Marcus nodded. "We'll take a legal approach, no heroics." The next morning, the four of them, Marcus, May, Clara, and Cole, met in the police station parking area. Argo sat at Cole's side, fur dusted with white flakes as snow fell around him. Clara checked her gloves, zipped her jacket, and asked Marcus, "Any risk of confrontation?" Marcus answered calmly, "Not if we do this right." They drove to the forest border in 2 vehicles, stopping at the access gate where the land formally shifted into federal jurisdiction. Clara produced documentation, and the ranger on site, a stocky older Native American man named Louis Running Bear, approved them with a silent nod. He had deep-set eyes and long gray hair tied back. He wasn't a man of many words, but his presence conveyed quiet wisdom. His simple warning was, "The forest remembers everything, but not everyone listens." Then he stepped aside. Cole felt a shiver, not of cold, but of gravity. Argo's ears rose, nose already tasting the air. The group proceeded, boots crunching softly on frozen snow. No shouting, no rushing, just listening. Argo indicated a direction, not toward the cave, but deeper into a hollow where the trees stood close together, forming a natural wall. The dog's tail stiffened. He lifted one paw, frozen mid-step, scent fixed on something unseen. Marcus murmured to Clara, "That means he's found a trail." Clara nodded, then let him lead. The dog moved slowly, with precision that bordered on artistry. Then he stopped at a patch of snow near a rock shelf. Clara brushed aside snow, and there it was, a bent metal bracket and a broken antenna piece. May exhaled sharply. "That's radio equipment, high frequency." Marcus looked at Cole. "Your memory was right." Clara gently picked up the antenna fragment, eyes hardening. This wasn't casual, this was intentional installation. Cole stared at the object. They weren't hiding from the storm. They were hiding from regulation. Clara stood, voice disciplined. This is no longer a missing person case. This is a state investigation. Marcus nodded. And if necessary, federal. Argo remained beside them, a silent sentinel of truth. In that moment, the forest no longer felt peaceful. It felt watchful. Because now they weren't merely walking among trees. They were walking in the shadow of secrets. And those secrets were no longer sleeping. The snow had settled into a deceptive calm by the time Cole Merrick was strong enough to walk outside again. It was a cold but gentle afternoon, the kind where the sky was a soft slate gray, and the pines held powdered snow on their branches like powdered sugar on dark green cakes. Frosthaven Ridge was recovering from the storm. Plows had cleared the roads, stores had reopened, and children were once again sliding along the sidewalks on their boots. Winter had not gone away, but it had softened its grip. Marcus Ellery waited beside a county vehicle in a civilian jacket and scarf rather than his police uniform, hoping this expedition would feel less like an interrogation and more like a shared mission. Cole approached slowly, bundled in a thick brown coat, gloves, and a wool beanie. He was still thinner than before, still bearing the faint shadows of the ordeal in his face, but color had returned to him. Walking beside Cole was Argo, his loyal German shepherd. The dog's step had regained confidence, fur groomed, ears alert, tail swaying slightly with that quiet dignity dogs possess when they know they have already done something heroic and do not need praise to confirm it. Marcus greeted them warmly. "Take it slow. We're not trekking the whole ridge, just returning to the path near the cave. The doctor insists you don't overexert." Cole gave a tired half smile. "The doctor also insists I drink 3 liters of water a day. I think he's trying to turn me into a walking reservoir." Marcus laughed softly, and together, with Argo leading the way, they headed toward the pine forest. Maylene joined them, same as before, short and sturdy in her insulated forest jacket, but today less stern, more companionable. She walked a few steps behind, holding a digital map tablet. May was always efficient, always thinking 2 or 3 steps ahead. Even now, her eyes scanned terrain and details with quiet precision. As they moved deeper into the trees, Cole inhaled the air, pine resin, frost, soil, the familiar scents of his long hikes. But contained within that smell was something else, memory. Argo stopped up ahead. His nose quivered. He snuffed lightly at the snow, then pawed at a thin buried spot beneath a fir tree. Cole's eyebrows lifted. "He remembers." Marcus approached. "What's he got?" Argo began digging slowly, not frantic, just purposeful scraping until something cloth-like emerged, a rectangle of fabric. Marcus crouched and lifted it carefully. It was a torn piece of camouflage uniform, not military issue the way Cole knew it, but a private tactical uniform, the kind used by private security companies or independent contractors. Cole's eyes narrowed slightly. "I saw something like that before the storm hit." Marcus turned, giving him room. "Tell us." Cole gathered his thoughts, speaking slowly, voice clear but weighted. "The day before I got stuck out there, I crossed paths with 2 men. They were wearing gear similar to this, only intact. They said they were out hunting, but no one, no rational person, goes hunting when a storm is forecast to bury half the county." May spoke, steady and calm. "Did they speak with an accent? Identify themselves?" Cole shook his head. "No, they barely engaged with me. One of them only said, 'Just minding our business.' But they watched me too carefully." Marcus considered this, expression darkening. He slid the fabric into an evidence bag. Argo sniffed the bag, then looked up as if confirming, "That is not the scent of innocence." They walked further, into a more remote section of forest. The snow here layered deeper, untouched by footsteps since the storm. Branches creaked overhead in the chilled wind. Argo stopped again, this time at a partially buried object near the base of a fallen log. He sniffed, circled, then scratched carefully. May knelt and brushed snow away. What emerged was a black glove, but a hardened one, reinforced along the knuckles. And faintly beneath the leather exterior, Marcus could smell it even before May spoke. The sharp, powdery scent of gunshot residue. May examined it with caution. This is no ordinary winter glove. Marcus nodded. No, it's tactical. Cole stared. They fired something? Marcus thought aloud. Or handled something fired. No wild theorizing, just measured deduction. Argo moved closer to Cole, nudging his leg, as though reminding him he wasn't alone in any of this. Then Cole gazed around, eyes dimming with recollection. I now remember something else, he said. Before the blizzard fully hit, I heard metal, like two objects being moved, like equipment, not rifles, but heavier, maybe radio gear. Marcus exchanged a look with May, eyes sharp. This wasn't about two hunters randomly wandering the woods. Something was being done out here. Marcus placed a hand gently on Cole's shoulder, not as an officer commanding, but as one human grounding another. This is not your burden to solve alone, he said. You weren't put in danger by bad luck. You may have stumbled into something. Cole's jaw tightened. Argo pressed his side against Cole's leg again, the world's quietest reassurance. They began their return walk as daylight waned, light fading through branches and streaks of tired amber. Cole felt the fatigue of the day, but also a strange strength in being back where it happened. This time, he wasn't trapped or terrified. He was walking out, upright, supported, and accompanied. As they neared the vehicles, Marcus slowed his pace, walking beside Cole and Argo. You did the right thing coming back here, Marcus said. Memory needs place. Cole nodded. And place remembers memory. May gave him a small, amused look. Poetic of you. They reached the car. Marcus opened the door for Cole. Argo hopped in first, turning and settling against Cole's side like a shadow, retaking its rightful position. As Marcus circled to the driver's side, he exhaled, a slow cloud of white. The search for a missing hiker was now something else. Now they had clues, a direction, not dramatic, but meaningful. And as the forest receded behind them, silent and shrouded, it held its secrets just a little less closely. The footprints under the pines had revealed the first thread, and the unraveling had begun. The morning after the rescue arrived, with a pale winter sun struggling through the clouds, casting a faint silver glow over Frosthaven General Hospital. A modest two-story building, with faded red bricks and windows that always seemed slightly fogged during winter months. Inside, the corridors smelled of antiseptic and coffee that had been reheated too many times. The heater hummed under the floors like a quiet mechanical heartbeat, warming the cold that had bitten into all of them. Cole Merrick lay in room 212, a soft-lit recovery room with a single window overlooking Frosthaven's pine-lined main street. He was still unconscious, but stable. The doctors had treated him for exposure, dehydration, and minor frostbite. His heartbeat was steady. His hands rested across his chest, pale but alive. Marcus Ellery stood at the door, his heavy winter coat now replaced by a simple police-issued wool sweater and jeans. Without snow obscuring him, one could better see the lines of fatigue under his eyes, not from lack of sleep alone, but from emotional control. Marcus was someone who carried responsibility like weight on his back, and last night had felt like carrying a frozen man out of the mouth of death. Beside Marcus stood Nurse Sarah Underwood, a 47-year-old white female whose presence brought the kind of calm that warmed more deeply than blankets. Sarah was slim, with a long face softened by kind eyes and gray streaks in her hair loosely tied back. She had a quiet voice, the kind that reduced anxiety rather than demanding attention. For 20 years she had cared for others, and a life-altering memory shaped her character. She once lost her only child to a winter illness when he was 8. That heartbreak transformed her, not into someone bitter, but someone whose compassion now seemed bottomless. Every patient became, in a way, a soul she refused to let slip through her fingers again. On the floor beside her sat Argo, Cole's loyal German shepherd. The dog had refused food during transport, but had finally eaten a little at the hospital. His fur was now brushed dry, though still matted slightly at the sides. He lay close to Cole's bed, eyes half open, observing every human movement with silent judgment. Nurse Sarah looked at Argo and said softly to Marcus, "We don't usually allow animals inside recovery rooms overnight, but I'm making an exception." Marcus gave a faint smile. "You don't have to explain. He kept that man alive. If any creature has earned the right to keep watch, it's him. Argo did not wag his tail. He simply blinked slowly, acknowledging the truth of those words. A moment later, Dr. Henry Wallace entered, a 55-year-old white male with salt and pepper beard, broad hands, and a blunt voice. He was respected, though known for being straightforward to the point of brusqueness. He cared deeply for patients, but he had little patience for emotional dithering. His defining life event had been serving as a frontline volunteer medic in hurricane-hit regions 10 years ago. That experience carved efficiency into him. When he spoke, it was concise because he had learned time could mean life. He looked at the chart, then at Cole, then at the dog. "Well," he said, "if that dog is emotional medicine, I'm not taking it away." His vitals showed improvement once the dog was brought near him. Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Correlation or causation?" Dr. Wallace smirked. "If it makes my patient breathe better, I don't care which." The doctor stepped out, leaving Marcus and Sarah inside. Then Cole stirred. It began with a twitch of his fingers, then a sharp, shallow inhale. His eyelids fluttered. Marcus approached slowly, like a man nearing a memory he didn't want to break. Cole blinked, vision blurry, then it focused. The first thing he saw wasn't the ceiling, nor the people, but Argo. The dog's head rose instantly, ears forward, tail giving a careful, controlled wag, not the frantic thump of joy, but the respectful greeting of a soldier acknowledging his commander is awake. Cole exhaled, half laugh, half sob, and ran his hand weakly over Argo's head. "You stayed all this time," he whispered. The dog pressed his head into Cole's palm, emitting a low, contented whine. Marcus spoke gently. "You were found in a cave. He kept you alive." Cole's eyes moved to Marcus. Recognition came slowly. "You were in the search team." Marcus nodded. Cole swallowed, voice raw. "How long?" 4 days, Marcus answered. "We almost lost you." Cole closed his eyes briefly. Argo put one paw over Cole's forearm, an anchor keeping him tethered to the present. Nurse Sarah approached and smiled kindly. "You gave us a scare, dear, but you're safe now." Cole looked at her, and something in her calm presence softened his chest. "Thank you. All of you." Marcus pulled a chair closer and sat. "I have to ask you some things," he said, voice calm, respectful. "But not now. Later, when you're stronger." Cole nodded faintly. Argo changed position, moving closer, resting half his body against the side of Cole's bed. His eyes remained alert, listening. Then, slowly, Cole began to speak, without prompting, as though the story had been waiting behind his teeth. "I remember the wind, the darkness, but what I remember most is feeling him breathing against me, keeping me warm. I think he didn't sleep, not once. He lay awake listening." Marcus watched Argo with reverence. "That's how loyalty breathes," he murmured. Cole's gaze drifted. "I adopted him after he failed K-9 selection. He couldn't handle explosive sounds. They said he wasn't cut out for the job. But I didn't need a fighter. I needed someone who could hear silence." Marcus nodded. "Not every warrior is built for war." Quiet settled over the room, the kind that felt less like emptiness and more like prayer. Outside the window, snow continued falling, slower now, drifting like white feathers settling after a storm. Later, when visiting hours ended, Marcus remained behind with permission, sitting near Cole while Argo rested with one eye still open. Marcus spoke quietly. "You know, I once had a K-9 partner, a big brute of a dog, Brutus. He saved my life once, and I couldn't save his. I still think about that." Cole opened his eyes, surprised at the vulnerability in Marcus's voice. Marcus continued, eyes fixed on the sleeping shepherd. "When I saw Argo with you down there in the cave, it reminded me that dogs don't measure loyalty the way people do. They don't weigh risk versus reward. They simply choose their person, and they stay, even if it kills them." Cole's voice cracked. "He never gave up on me." "No," Marcus replied. "He didn't." Nurse Sarah returned with fresh blankets. She draped one gently over Cole, then placed a smaller folded one over Argo, smiling at the absurd tenderness of giving a dog a blanket. "Everyone deserves to be warm," she said softly. Argo responded by shifting and letting out a slow sigh, the first sign of real relaxation since the cave. He lay his head across Cole's foot, finally allowing himself rest. The heater hummed. The room lights dimmed to amber. Frosthaven outside grew quiet. And in that quiet recovery room, two men, one human, one canine, lay breathing in a slow, shared rhythm, like a lullaby that mended the heart. The storm had taken much from them, but in this small, warm space, it had returned something profound. Not just life, but belonging. The winter storm rolled over Frosthaven Ridge like a white curtain drawn across the world. The town of Frosthaven was a humble community tucked against the northern ridges of the Windmore Mountains, known for its quiet streets, its sparse pine forests, and its winters that sometimes felt biblical. Tonight, the wind howled through those pines as if old spirits were singing warnings, and the snow was thick enough to hide both footprints and fears. The search and rescue team moved slowly through the frozen evening, their headlamps cutting faint tunnels of pale yellow light in all that white. Their leader, Officer Marcus Ellery, walked ahead, scanning the terrain with steady eyes. Marcus was a 46-year-old white male, tall, broad-shouldered, with an angular face and streaks of silver along his dark hair. He had spent 20 years in law enforcement, 15 of them in Frosthaven. People described him as calm but quietly intense. A man with a sturdy moral spine, the kind that bends for no one. A defining event in his life was losing a K9 partner in his early years, a German shepherd named Brutus. That loss made Marcus someone who respected dogs not as tools, but as colleagues with souls. He never yelled at dogs, never yanked leashes. He spoke softly and trusted their intelligence. Beside him trudged Argo, the borrowed German shepherd from the county rescue unit. Argo was 5 years old, sable-colored, with a black saddle of darker fur across his back, intelligent amber eyes, and powerful limbs built for endurance. Unlike most K9s, Argo wasn't particularly aggressive. He preferred close physical contact and often pressed against his handler for reassurance. His trait was empathy more than intimidation. He was bred from therapy-inclined working lines. He was a dog who felt the emotional register of a situation before reacting, which made him, in Marcus's opinion, even more valuable than a dog that simply followed commands. Behind Marcus walked two other officers, Ethan Crowley, a 31-year-old white male, slim but athletic, with brown hair and quick, restless eyes, and Mei Lin, a 29-year-old Asian female, short, wiry, efficient, with soft round cheeks that looked disarmingly gentle, until she started making tactical assessments with razor-sharp accuracy. May had transferred to Frosthaven 3 years ago after leaving a larger metropolitan department where she had felt lost in bureaucracy. Frosthaven gave her purpose. She was loved by community elders and known for always bringing warm tea to staff meetings. During the 4th day of the search, the missing person, Cole Merrick, had gone from statistical survival probability to mere prayer. Cole was a 33-year-old white male, former military technical specialist, now working freelance as a communications consultant. Lean-built, with dark blonde hair and a modest beard, he was known in town as quiet but kind, always willing to help neighbors with electronics or repairs. He suffered from bouts of anxiety after leaving the service. Not disabling, but enough that people noticed his preference for solitude. He had gone into the forest before the storm, which was normal for him. He hiked often, but then the storm hit early, harder than predicted, and Cole didn't return. Marcus stopped and lifted a hand, signaling silence. The wind wailed against the branches overhead, distant and sharp. Then he felt it, or rather, he sensed Argo shift. The dog's ears perked, his body stiffened, and he tilted his nose downward toward a subtle break in the snowpack. Argo whined softly, then barked, once, twice, 3 deliberate clipped barks. Marcus inhaled sharply. 3 barks meant breath detected, human respiration, faint. The team circled. Marcus knelt, brushing snow with gloved fingers. There was a natural rock fissure there, a narrow, dark slit between boulders, partially concealed by drifts of snow and a fallen pine branch. Cold air vented up through it, but there was something else, a ghost of warm breath. Marcus motioned to Ethan, who crouched with a flashlight. He shone the beam downward into the small cavern beneath, and that was when they found them. At the bottom of the crevice, pressed against the inner wall of the cave, was Cole Merrick, unconscious but alive, his face pale, breath shallow, ice crystals clinging to his beard. And next to him, curled like a living blanket, was another German shepherd, older, slightly larger than Argo, sable and tan fur dulled by frost. The real Argo, Cole's Argo. This original Argo, Cole's dog, was a 6-year-old male with a deeper chest, a slightly grizzled muzzle, and remarkably soft brown eyes, known by townspeople as gentle even with children. He had followed Cole everywhere since Cole adopted him from a canine rejection program. The dog was deemed too noise-sensitive for flashbang exposure tasks, but Cole had seen something in him. A dog who listened with his heart. Now, Cole's Argo lay pressed against his owner, using body heat to prevent hypothermia, instincts sharpened by devotion and desperation. Marcus lowered himself toward the cave opening and spoke in a warm, careful tone. "Easy, boy. We're here to help. We're not taking him away from you." Cole's Argo opened his eyes. He didn't growl, didn't snap, didn't block access. He simply observed, trembling from exhaustion and cold. His gaze seemed to weigh their intentions, like a tired soldier deciding whether to stand down. Marcus extended his hand, palm down, fingers relaxed. Cole's Argo sniffed it. His tail twitched faintly. Once, acceptance. They worked quickly. May and Ethan lowered thermal blankets and straps. Marcus descended halfway into the fissure, securing Cole's arms while Ethan hoisted slowly. Argo, both Argos, watched anxiously, their eyes almost mirroring human concern. As Cole surfaced into the open, winter air, he murmured incoherently but breathed. That alone was a miracle. May checked his vitals. Ethan wrapped another blanket around him. Then Marcus reached down again, this time for Cole's Argo. The dog hesitated, not out of fear, but as if reluctant to break physical contact with his unconscious human. Marcus whispered, voice trembling with familiarity of old grief. "He's safe now. Let us take care of him." Cole's Argo shifted forward and allowed Marcus to lift him. The dog was lighter than expected, weight lost over 4 starving days. When they began the trek back toward town, the wind had softened slightly, as if nature itself had paused its fury in respect for this small act of faith between man and animal. And for the first time in 4 days, Marcus allowed his spirit a sliver of hope, because tonight, in that wild white emptiness, they had found a man kept alive not by gear or shelter, but by loyalty. Sometimes the miracles God sends do not appear in loud thunder or bright visions. Sometimes they arrive quietly through the loyalty of a dog that refuses to leave, through the strength placed in the heart of a man on the edge of despair, and through the compassion of people who choose to help instead of turning away. In our everyday lives, we face storms too, moments of fear, loneliness, uncertainty, but God walks beside us even when we cannot see Him clearly. He guides our steps, protects our families, and sends us help in ways we often recognize only afterward. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who needs hope today. Leave a comment to tell us your thoughts, and type Amen if you believe that God still works miracles in quiet ways. May God bless you and your loved ones with peace, strength, and protection wherever you are watching from. And please remember to subscribe to support this channel so we can continue bringing stories of faith, courage, and love to you.